Something I've always found interesting when it comes to friendships and people that surround me is they typically forget that I'm Afro Latino, Afro Caribbean. And that tends to be one of the contentions when it comes to friendships and shit like that, or when I'm talking to people who so called call themselves my friends. You'll get something where people will say, "Well, Tico, you're arrogant." No, I'm not arrogant. I'm the least arrogant person you'll ever meet. I might be an asshole, but I'm not arrogant. And this is one of those things that people always try to conflate. Because typically, if you come from certain cultures, you find out very quickly that these cultures have a certain zest or zeal about themselves. Because at the end of the day, when you take these cultures and you put them into like the American culture, where everybody has a low self-esteem or a low opinion of themselves, you typically end up with a lot of people who just have a very low opinion of themselves, for reals. And it's one of those things where they mistake your culture for being arrogant, your culture, your cultural upbringing for you being arrogant, when in fact it's just your cultural upbringing. I can't help that you grew up in a culture with a low self-esteem, if you know what I mean. And this is one of the many problems that I always run into with friends or people who call themselves my friends, is their ability to actually always say I'm arrogant when in fact I'm actually just confident within myself to know what's right or wrong, or what I need, what I can and cannot do in my life. And the sad part about that is I'm not always the most open person. So when I do open up, you find out very new things about me as a friend. But the sad part about that, if you don't ask, you would never know. So you would think I'm this amazing person, and it would just hurt your feelings. But people don't ask that. People never really dive into stuff like that. This is typically how you know. You start finding out who's actually your friends and who's not your friends. Who's there for their own personal gain and who's not there for their own personal gain. And this is something I've always learned, being an Afro-Latino or Afro-Caribbean when it comes down to it. I could typically tell the people that's there for their own personal gain versus the people that's actually there to actually be my friend. Because the people who's there for their own personal gain typically don't really ask me shit or rely on me to initiate a lot of shit. And that's the problem with a lot of friendships. You got a person a person in a friendship that's doing all the giving and sharing, or the giving and listening, and you got the other person that's all about themselves in relationships. This is typically why a lot of relationships never go anywhere, or a lot of relationships end up breaking down due to, the lack of interest from another party. Because the sad part about that, you never want to be in a friendship with somebody who's just there to drain your energy, or there to, not really learn anything about you. Because the sad part about friendships is you're there to learn about each other. You're there to lean on each other and know each other's strengths and weaknesses, so y'all can be a perfect friend, perfect pairing of friends for all intents and purposes. This is typically why a lot of friendships, like I said, break down, or a lot of friendships don't make it, or a lot of friends don't actually make it to actual friendship status, despite the fact that somebody in their mind believes that they're a friend. The sad part about that is typically people who do that, typically people who try to shoehorn you into like a certain relationship or a friendship, are the type of people who either A, want more from you, but they're too scared to admit it because they're assholes, or they're too scared to fall for you, basically, because they're scared of your personality and how you react. Because I've met a lot of women who I'm actually friends with who would do some stupid shit to test the waters to see what I think of them. And it's like, well, no, I never really thought of you like that. And then they get their little feelings hurt, and so they slink back to their little corner and they'll lick their wounds. I've actually had a lot of female friends who do that stuff. And it's funny when it happens, because it's one of those things where it's like, I don't really think of them in a sexual manner. Like, I might say some crazy stuff to them, but I don't really think of them ever in a sexual manner. So women take that as I'm interested in them, so they try, and then they end up slinking back to the corner, licking their wounds. It's sad, but it always happens. This is typically why I always say men and women can't be friends, because at the end of the day, let's just face it, if somebody has some type of attraction towards you, or is starting to gain some type of feelings towards you, they'll typically say something, then they'll go back and recant it, and or lie about it later on down the line. It is what it is. But it's one of those things where, like, you got to understand the person on the other side of the coin, per se, that you're calling your friend. Are they there for you? Or are they there for themselves? Are they there for? Do they have ulterior motives? Or are they there for to actually be your actual friend? And that's something that you always got to ask yourself. It's basically what I was talking about in my forever people and temporary people, for all intents and purposes. But adios.